We are watching you out on Restream as well as the Rumble Rants. We, of course, are also on Twitter Spaces, and we're welcoming Robert Barnes in today. Robert has a show with Viva Fry, one of our recurring and friends and recurring guest here. Robert is a constitutional, criminal tax, and civil rights attorney. He co-hosts, as I said, Viva and Barnes, and also the Law for the People podcast. It's Viva and Barnes Law for the People podcast with Viva. Barnes Law has defended a variety of cases, including Wesley Snipes versus the IRS, Alex Jones in the Sandy Hook case. He's got a lot of interesting insight. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk a little Biden v. Missouri. We're going to talk about a Amish farmer that's in trouble for daring to, I think, distribute unpasteurized milk, and whose business is that of the federal government, I guess. But they seem to be in everything these days. And I want to play a tape for you from Francis Collins, where he admits that public health totally screwed up during COVID. After this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way.
He was an alcoholic.
Because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin, ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people.
I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals.
Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time.
Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat.
If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Let's talk about aging, because everyone wants to know how to slow it down. For almost a decade, I've been taking a healthy aging supplement called True Niagen. This supplement boosts NAD, that's something that cells can't live without. It's done with a patented form of nicotinamide riboside called NR, or Niagen. It's more efficient and more scientifically reviewed than NMN or other NAD boosters. True Niagen is truly the best way to boost NAD levels. And it's made by Chromadex. They are the gold standard in the NAD space. Dr. Charles Brenner, the scientist who discovered the NAD boosting potential of NR, explains.
And the center of the metabolism that allows the conversion of food into energy is NAD coenzymes. And NAD gets disturbed in the aging process. And as we're exposed to conditions of metabolic stress, Niagen, which is the form of NR that was developed by Chromadex, is the best and the only fully legal form of NR. And this is really the gold standard for NAD boosting vitamins.
I love this product. I urge you to try it. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen, TRUNIAGEN, and enter Dr. Drew at checkout, DRDREW. Enter it at checkout for 20% off. So let's just review the schedule very quickly, Caleb, if you don't mind. Ed Dowd with Kelly Victory in here tomorrow, so I'll be away and traveling. On April 9th, Vivek Ramaswamy, Arbor Cummings, Jack Prosovic, Matthias Desmet, the a mental health professional that studied mass formation, Salty Crackerback, got a lot coming your way, and today is no exception. We have Robert Barnes, as I said, constitutional, criminal tax, and civil rights attorney. The Viva and Barnes Law for the People podcast with our friend Viva. Please welcome Robert Barnes. Hey, Robert, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
So I got a lot I want to talk to you about. I'm curious about one thing, it sort of indulge me on this. How did you and Viva get together?
Viva, I was defending Alex Jones early on in some of the Sandy Hook related libel lawsuits. I defended his deposition, his first one. And Viva covered it, was one of the only people that could give an objective coverage because it's Alex Jones. And I reached out, said, hey, good coverage. And he said, hey, I'd like to interview you. I said, yeah, sure, I'll hop on. And that was the beginning of a long friendship.
That's interesting. And there you are. Are you in Florida with him, or where are you?
He was in Comida at the time. I live in Las Vegas. Law practice located all over the place. I have offices in Wisconsin, Tennessee, and California,
Gotcha.
and sort of everywhere. But yeah, he was. That was before his escape.
His escape from, what do you call it, Kamida? It's very
Yeah,
funny.
exactly.
And where'd you grow up?
Chattanooga, Tennessee. Family's a bunch of Rhode Islanders. Go all the way back to the beginning of the country. But my father moved from there to Michigan down to Tennessee, where I was born and raised.
So that was Roger Smith. He was the rebel that formed Rhode Island, right? Was that his name?
Yeah. Oh, there were several of them. I mean, we got family goes all the way back. There was a Barnes that was on the ship right after the Mayflower. So
Right.
and we were always causing trouble. Voted against the Constitution until it had the Bill of Rights added to it. Wanted to stand up against that. Rhode Island didn't originally approve the Constitution because it didn't have a Bill of Rights. Then they,
Right.
later on they sent in the Army, and we're like, okay, we'll go along for now. But good old populist political tradition going way back.
Yeah, Rhode Island's a really interesting state. People don't. It's so small. People don't realize the impact it had. And the other thing they don't realize, it's a little rim of land around a giant bay. It's just this. People think of it as a square. No. That's all water. There's even less land than you imagine.
Oh, precisely.
And so you've also piqued my curiosity about the Unruly Americans over your left shoulder there. Tell me what that's all about.
So it's a great book about American history, about who really helped form the Constitution. So the assumption about the Constitution is we often focus on more of the elites that were involved, those who are, the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists. We describe often our founding fathers as just a small group of people who got together in Philadelphia, when they were heavily influenced by ordinary people from all across the country who made a great impact. I mean, they would read things like Thomas Paine's Common Sense in the taverns and public houses and meeting places all across the nation that helped form the American Revolution. They helped make it possible and achievable by either joining boycotts or literally joining the Revolutionary Army or doing various campaigns with Sam Adams' Sons of Liberty and the like. And so it's a book about how all these ordinary, everyday people helped really shape one of the greatest political revolutions in world history. And it's great and that's why she calls it Unruly Americans, because they are ordinary, everyday people who refuse to just go along to get along, who are willing to challenge established traditions that most people were unwilling to even question or contest. Traditions like the right of the king to be a sovereign and being anointed by God and all the rest. And it's a reminder to everyday people today that, as difficult as it may seem to achieve things, our ancestors set out to achieve something nobody thought possible, and yet they did.
And do you think that spirit that, of course, we're not teaching anybody about how that all happened, is carrying today? Or is there enough of that autonomous spirit and thought to be able to pull us out of this cultural war we're in?
I think so. I think we've seen it. A lot of people woke up from the COVID set of policies. Like, a lot of Americans are willing to go along to get along. And okay, we got to stay at home. Okay, we got to stay 6 feet away from our loved ones. Okay, we can't do weddings. We can't attend funerals. We can't see our loved ones in the hospital. But as it accumulated, people started waking up to saying, hold on, there's an old American spirit we need to remember here, to question our so-called betters, to challenge established logic and established authorities. And I think we're seeing it reflected in the rebirth of Donald Trump's campaign against all the lawfare. We're seeing it in the recandescence of the Kennedy legacy with Robert Kennedy's presidential campaign, heavily based on what took place during the pandemic. And we're seeing it in people that are rallying to people like the Amish farmer Amos Miller, an ordinary person just trying to farm the same way our founding generation did, provide us good, healthy food that everybody loves, that the government is obsessed with shutting it down. And the only reason why he's still afloat and he isn't bankrupt is because ordinary people have rallied to his defense all across the America.
Yeah, that's the kind of extraordinary. The behavior of the government, I can't get over it. When you talk about the farmer and his unpasteurized milk, I think about some of the restaurants here in Los Angeles that attempted to stay open, and we're literally faced with not just police action, but there's this place called Tin Horn Flats a few miles from here that literally has a fence around it. They just fenced it in because they kept trying to serve their customers outside, by the way, out of doors. And so, Susan, my wife, the other day said, people still want to talk about COVID. I said, it's not COVID so much. We can't get over what the government did. Do you agree with that, Susan?
Well, they're trying to tell their stories, and it's like, well, where do I tell my story? I lost a niece at 15 after she had the vaccine, and nobody cares. But I see how the people are starting to wake up and realize that it was not a good idea.
Well, I want to play, Caleb, do you have that tape ready from Twitter? This is Francis Collins 3 months ago, admitting things. The other thing you mentioned, Robert, about the sort of activity of the government at the time was you listed a bunch of things that were absolutely nonsensical. And even at the time, people were like, huh, what? Something's fishy here. What's going on? Okay, I guess we'll go along with it. But why are you doing this? Shut up. And, and here we come. We're going to get you. That was the part that was astonishing. And now here, you take it back to the beginning.
And you're trying to make a decision as a guy living inside the Beltway.
Listen to this.
Feeling the sense of crisis, trying to decide what to do in some situation
in
the White House with
during
people
COVID.
Who had data that was incomplete.
Francis
we weren't
Collins.
really thinking about what that would mean to Wilk and his family in Minnesota. 1,000 miles away from where the virus was hitting so hard. We weren't really considering the consequences in communities that were not New York City or some other big city. The public health people, we talked about this earlier, and this is a really important point. If you're a public health person and you're trying to make a decision, you have this very narrow view of what the right decision is, and that is something that will save a life. Doesn't matter what else happens. So you attach infinite value to stopping the disease and saving a life. You attach a zero value to whether this actually totally disrupts people's lives, ruins the economy, and has many kids kept out of school in a way that they never quite require.
Collateral damage.
So collateral damage. This is a public health mindset. And I think a lot of us involved in trying to make those recommendations had that mindset. And that was really unfortunate. It's another mistake we made.
Okay.
Oh, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that an entire generation was sacrificed. It's unfortunate that kids are committing suicide. It's unfortunate the death rate is now up. Listen, thank you, Francis Collins, for being honest and stating the truth. But it's disgusting that we were all subjected to that. It's truly disgusting. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what do we do?
Exactly. I mean, and there's a bunch of cases that I filed at the time that we continue to work on and file. It exposed two things. One is we've got to make sure these emergency powers are drastically limited and restricted, never to be utilized.
Robert, I'm going to interrupt you. Robert, the World Health Organization's coming in with a treaty. They want all of it. Not only did they feel this was a worthwhile exercise, they want to do it again on steroids and take over all duly elected sovereign officials. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. And you just heard how public health officials think. They're unable to make a risk-reward analysis. They shouldn't be in those jobs. Disgusting. It is truly disgusting.
And I think what else it unmasked was the illusion of power that these agencies shouldn't have in the begin with. There's the belief in their confidence and their capabilities. I mean, today, for example, when you announced we were going to be on, somebody was saying, how could Dr. Drew say anything positive about unpasteurized milk? And I responded to the person. I was like, don't you know one of the leading experts in the country testified for Amos Miller in court under penalty of perjury, someone who's studied this for more than 2 decades, most of that time at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, saying that milk we've been drinking for centuries turns out has a lot of health benefits. And this was an ordinary person on social media who didn't know that, who thought the whole world knew that unpasteurized milk was scary, frightening, terrifying, was going to kill us all. And I was like, this is how COVID policy happened. A bunch of people out there just trusted that, hey, I put on a white lab coat. We lived the Milgram experiment in live time. Somebody in a white lab coat came and told us to do something, and we just did it.
Yes, we did.
And we did it to the detriment of our children, to our elders,
Caleb,
to our communities,
put up
to our
some
neighbors.
pictures. Yep.
Oh,
Wait until you see
precisely.
pictures of the Milgram experiment. It's pretty impressive what it looks like when they've taken stills of it, this Yale study. Yeah, you were absolutely right. It's the Milgram experiment in real time. And if you want to know how freaking incompetent bureaucracies are, just put up the food pyramid. Go ahead, put up the old food pyramid, put up the new food pyramid, which I believe includes Fruit Loops. It is just beyond it's beyond comprehension what goes on, and that we go for it. So, I had it been pre-COVID and you came in and started defending unpasteurized milk, I would have been like, no, Robert, come on now, we got to be careful. Brucella, I've seen some Brucella, you've never seen it. In fact, you've never seen tularemia. It's pretty nasty. Now my position is, people want to take that risk, just as long as they understand the risk. Have at it, everybody. And the government has no business telling people how to live their life.
Exactly. I mean, our food models, all of our law models were based on informed consent of the consumer. Supposed to be the same with medicine.
Yes.
And so the individual.
Supposed to be.
Exactly. It's that if I'm going to the grocery store and I see a label, I can know that it's an accurate label, that it's not a misleading label. If back in the 1900s, you could open up a can of kidney beans and inside was like corn. All kinds of crazy things were happening as food started getting commercialized, industrialized, and I no longer had access to my local farmer. Maybe I was a migrant from another part of the world that came here, or I was a rural person moving to a big city. And it was all supposed to be about us, empowering us, entrusting us, giving us accurate information. All of Pennsylvania's food laws are similarly designed. And so here you have someone like Amos Miller, Amish farmer, 5th generation. I mean, he's farming the exact same way his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, his great-great-grandfather did. Some of the most beautiful agricultural landscape you'll ever see in the world. Gorgeous farm, tries to get the best sourced materials. He's got Jersey cows, he's got water buffalo, all those kind of things right there on the farm. His family is the one that runs the farm in the same ways. And he tries to make sure it's as good as possible for people. And because he feeds his own family with it. And yet the government's coming in and saying, well, you can't distribute anything to anybody, even if they want it, even if they need it, even if they demand it, unless we, the government, I call the Secretary of Agriculture Redding, Pope Redding. Unless he blesses your food, you're not allowed to eat it. And that unless he has his permits control the process, you're not allowed to distribute anything. And then they've designed the permit process to be a prohibition process. Like in Pennsylvania, if you want to make raw milk, well, you have to agree you will never make 90% of raw milk products. You're only allowed to make fluid raw milk and this kind of hard cheese, and that's it. And most of the people who are Amos Miller's members, who join his farm organization and kind of like a co-op and get his food, they often medically need certain of his unique raw milk products. Their children or they have a certain unusual medical condition that really only raw milk products helps. And that's who he's most concerned with, is protecting their access to something they need. They've tried to get it from other places. They can't. And that's who the government is coming in and saying, no, we know you say that you need it. We know you've got medical testimony saying you need it. You've got evidence saying you need it. It's your informed consent that's supposed to govern these laws, but we're not going to allow you to get it. We're going to prohibit Amos Miller from even making it accessible to you. And that's what the state of Pennsylvania is doing. Before the federal government was harassing him about poultry and meat and did it meet this standard and that standard. And it's because a lot of ordinary people don't want food made the corporatized, mechanized, industrialized way. They want food from the farmer made the traditional way.
How dare you? Do you mean our food supply is healthy? And it's, you mentioned RFK Jr. and his new vice presidential candidate. They are very concerned about food supply, but just look around you. People look so healthy and they're in such great shape. I mean, the evidence is the food supply sucks. That's what the evidence is. And if people want to try something a little outside of the box, as long as they understand what they're doing. Look, I personally would not drink unpasteurized milk. I don't prescribe much ivermectin, but I would go to the mat to defend a doctor's ability to prescribe that medicine if he or she thinks it's right. And I would go to the mat for Amos to provide this and for somebody to consume it if that's what they want to do. So what has happened here where this insanity, we have to have these conversations to protect ourselves from a government that we fought a revolution to protect us from, and a civil war on top of that. What is this? What's happening? Is it just bureaucracy grows and drifts towards totalitarianism in all states, or is it just we have to push back now and shrink things? What's going on?
It shows that we gave too much power to all these regulatory agencies. You have these people that are career bureaucrats. They've never been farmers in their lives. They've never dealt with people that had unique medical needs for certain kinds of food products. And they were living, physical, walking examples of what's wrong with their food recommendations. I mean, they came into court and each one looked exactly like you would expect them to look. And it's like, we're supposed to take food advice from you? Well, you're supposed to tell us what we can and can't feed our own children? We can. I mean, in this case, they were telling Amos Miller they were rationing his own food to his own family, telling him how much and what he could feed his own family. Not only that, they were telling him what he could feed his pigs. They said, you can feed your pigs this, but you can't feed your pigs that. I mean, it was that kind of, it's a control mindset, a power mindset that we saw reflect.
Right.
You know, COVID taught us
Weren't
what
these
that
things-
looks like ultimately.
Yes, they did. They pulled the dressing right off the wound, and it was all laid bare for us. Weren't these sorts of? I think about the CDC this way because I know this was there, and certainly the FDA had no business in the practice of medicine whatsoever, ever. It was not for that. But the CDC was always sort of an advisory organization. They provided us information. Wasn't a lot of this agricultural regulation initially more advisory? And how did it become sort of, thus saith the Lord? Is it different in different states? Or how'd that happen?
All of this was originally about just labeling. In other words, like something that was adulterated was something that was both dangerous to your health and wasn't supposed to be in there. So to suddenly say, well, we don't like, say, unpasteurized milk, so we're going to call it adulterated. Well, no, it's all natural. There's nothing in there that doesn't come from nature, and it's exactly what the person wants and is getting. I mean, no person can even get Amos Miller's product that doesn't
call it anything they want. Call it, put a skull and crossbone on it, as long as they let him do his thing. I don't care. But they're not. The part that is so disturbing about our present moment is they've gone way into telling us how to live our lives in almost every sphere. I mean, literally, I can't, hide under your bed, shelter in place, all this nonsense. And they've just seemed to have gotten very high on that. And it goes on. My question again is it all just these little cases? Is it, Biden versus Missouri? Is it cases, to support Amos? Is it one by one sorting these things out in the courts?
Right now it is. And because each case is a template of what they can or can't do, to either limit what they can do or empower what they can do. And so each one is going to have these much broader consequences than just one farmer. Because ultimately they're saying they get to dictate our diet. And then when Thomas Jefferson said, there's nothing more dangerous to your soul than a government being able to control your diet, to paraphrase it. He compared it to being more tyrannical than the British at the peak of the American Revolution. And that gives you a sense of his mindset. And he talked about the French banning the potato and saying, look at how nuts this stuff can get. And now we're living it. We've gone from over 90% of our food we consumed from a farmer that we knew, to today, only 2% of all of our food supply comes directly from a farmer at all. Over 90, we have 4 companies in different, whether you're talking about poultry, whether you're talking about pork, whether you talk about beef, you've got a small number of corporations that control and monopolize our food. And that's not a good place to be. We saw that during the pandemic. We suddenly had a beef shortage. Like, how do we, in America, the great cattle country, how do we have a beef shortage? Because we got a small number of companies that are controlling our food. And it's not good when people like Bill Gates, a big promoter of a lot of the COVID interventions, is out buying up all the farmland across the country when he doesn't believe in traditional farms. This is not a good indicator.
Robert, I don't know if you see what Caleb is throwing up on the screen, but it's hysterical. For the podcast listeners, Caleb, just review that tab. That's very funny.
Putting up some recent Google searches here of how many people die from drinking raw milk per year. And the last report from the NIH says about 2 deaths. How many people die from alcohol per year? About 178,000. How many people die from sharks per year? There are 14 confirmed shark-related fatalities this year, 10 which were unprovoked. So, you're more likely to die from sharks than you are from raw milk, guys.
But the way these bureaucrats think is, you see what a good job we're doing? Only 2 deaths. Yeah, see what we've done here? We've really protected the public against is it Brucella they're worried about? What are they worried about? What actually is it that they're going to die of from unpasteurized milk?
What was fascinating is they've over the years they've tried to spread various false claims about Amos. Amos goes through he has stainless steel. He does everything to the highest possible standard. And
right.
he's distributed millions of products, tens of thousands of Americans over 20 years. And so we got all the government data. It's like, okay, give me every single complaint anyone has ever filed. If anybody produces food or run a restaurant, you're going to have somebody usually that complains. It's just the nature of food, the nature of the human body. It turned out, and they all had to admit this on the stand. They kept trying to dodge the question, and then finally they have to admit it. In 20 years, tens of millions of products, tens of thousands of Americans, they had zero complaints to anybody, anywhere, any place, anytime about either the safety or the accuracy of anything they ever got from Amos Miller. And they hated admitting that. They tried to blame him. They said they thought it was a listeria person. It turned out that the person's own family said she didn't drink raw milk. She had 4th stage cancer. And it turned out the listeria positive test came 6 months before and had nothing to do with anything related to Amos Miller. So that's the nature of it.
We get listeria outbreaks still around here. That's one of the things that happens in certain tainted cheeses. That's usually where it comes from, and we learn about it very quickly. It's not in unpasteurized cheeses; it's just in cheeses. And Caleb, maybe that's where you got your Crohn's disease. Maybe you should sue your mom since she fed you unpasteurized milk.
Well, see, we actually didn't have unpasteurized milk until I was much older because we didn't go into that until I was like 14 or 15. But they have found some links between milk and cows. There's certain connections between cows that have a Crohn's-like disease that this stuff is connected in some way.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's
funny is pasteurized milk, though. We drank goat milk too. We were goat farmers, Drew. We didn't have cows.
Well, goat is where the brucella comes from, if I remember right. And that's a pretty nasty illness too. So I'm surprised. Maybe that's what gave you the Crohn's. But anyway, Robert,
Drew,
go ahead.
if you had a cup of coffee at Caleb's house and you wanted cream in your coffee, I think you would drink the goat milk. I think you would try it.
Oh, I would try it.
You would drink it. And I think because 100%. You love cream in your coffee.
Yeah. You got to try goat milk.
You got to do what you got to do. And I'm a rebel. What about ice cream?
You got to try goat milk ice cream. Like when we really went into that homesteading, moving from the city to the country when I was a teenager, we got a ton of goats and we would milk the goats every single morning. The kids would have to do it and it would just be straight from the goat right into the bucket. And that's what we would drink.
And don't the French like eat every part of the goat, right? There's certain there's certain out in the country practices and they don't mess around with processing of that stuff. Let's take a little break. Robert Barnes is the guest. Why don't let's see, you can go on X. You can just follow him at Barnes. Is that correct? Barnes. You've got that. There's the Law Podcast, Viva and Barnes. Barnes Law, of course. You can write Barnes Law. Oh, Barnes _law. I beg your pardon. I didn't see the underscore there. So it's Barnes _law. So you follow. And then Barnes Law LLP on Instagram, is that correct? Or just that's BarnesLawLLP.com is where people go, right?
Yep, that's it.
The latter. Okay. So Barnes Law LLP, go there to get his website. And then on Twitter or X, it is Barnes _law. And we are watching you guys on the rants. And the
now, a word from our sponsors.
Yep. Please pay attention. Be right back. You could spend thousands of dollars and dozens of hours trying to look a few years younger, or you can skip all that and the hassle and go with what works, Genucel Skincare. Genucel is the secret to better skin. Their products are made in the USA using a proprietary technology that combines a naturally effective base with non-GMO ingredients. In fact, you might have witnessed the astonishing effects of Genucel during a recent unplanned moment of our show, when just a little Genucel XV restored my skin within minutes right before your eyes. That is how fast these products work.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com.
Susan and I love Genucel so much, we've created our own bundle so you can try our favorite anti-wrinkle creams, correcting serums, under-eye treatments. Say goodbye to those fine lines, forehead wrinkles, skin redness, even those dark under-eye bags. Women and men of all skin types, Genucel has got you covered. Order right now at Genucel.com/Drew to save 50%, actually over 50%, and you'll get a free luxury spa box plus free shipping. That is genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. We all know the value of a good night's sleep. We feel better, look better, have more energy to spare, but you could be missing out on all of those benefits if you're sleeping on sheets that are too hot or too cold or just plain uncomfortable. I have the solution. Cozy Earth bedding. Cozy Earth is the softest and most comfortable sheets, blankets, loungewear, and more. They use premium viscose from highly sustainable bamboo, and we sleep in them regularly. I wear their t-shirts. Susan wears their pajamas. Cozy Earth bedding comes with a 100-night sleep trial, which means you have up to 100 nights to sleep on them, wash them, try them out. If you're not in love, just return them within 100 days for a full refund. Susan and I love them. In fact, we have Cozy Earth sheets on our bed right now, and they made a huge difference in our sleep. If you've never tried Cozy Earth, we have some awesome news. You can save up to 35% off Cozy Earth right now. But hurry, this offer will not last. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter my promo code DREW at checkout for up to 35% off on your first order. That is CozyEarth.com, promo code DREW, COZYEARTH, CozyEarth.com, code DREW. You asked for it, and the Wellness Company has delivered. The medical emergency kit, replete with ivermectin, prescription antibiotics, and more, continues to fly off the shelves. We keep one here at home. And there are 3 new kits you need to know about, and more are coming. The Contagion Emergency Kit was inspired by the high demand for the medical kits. In that Contagion kit, you'll find ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, budesonide, and a nebulizer. And a must for your next trip is the Travel Emergency Kit, something I made sure exactly what I give my patients is in this kit and some more. The kit includes remedies for jet lag, variety of infections, even GI ailments. Imagine your flight getting grounded anywhere, say even in the U.S., and you start getting sick. You do not want to be at the mercy of the U.S. healthcare system or any healthcare system. At home, we keep the Ultimate First Aid Kit on hand. It has over 20 essential supplies and medications for situations when time is of the essence. Order one for your car and your go bag. Because these kits contain prescriptions, your purchase includes a telemedicine consultation as well as an instruction manual. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. That is drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all your orders. I'm very excited about these kits. Go to drdrew.com/TWC. And before I tell you about our new partnership with our friends at Paleo Valley, I want to remind everyone, I want to announce to everyone that TWC just, what's the matter?
There you go.
There we go. She hit the camera. It's okay. TWC announced today that Dr. Kelly Victory is joining our chief medical board. So Dr. Victory is part of the team there. And we ourselves have a new partnership with our friends at Paleo Valley. We love their stuff. Susan and I think the bone broth is the most delicious. And of course, one of the highest quality you will find out there. Comes in chocolate, vanilla, unflavored. We add it to our coffee every day. She said, I love cream. I do, but then I add the bone broth made from actual bones of grass-fed and finished beef. You get the glycine, amino acid, glucosamine, gelatin, bioavailable protein, and collagen, which helps reduce wrinkles and laxity, helps the gut, supports joint health, and it tastes great. By using our exclusive promo code, you can get 15% off your first order of all products and 20% off when you subscribe to get even a bigger discount on your bone broth, beef sticks, or anything Paleo Valley has to offer. If you want to help support your joint health, reduce cellulite, grow healthier hair, nails, skin, go to drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order of all the great products available there, or simply subscribe to get 20% off. You will automatically save when you use the link drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. So just click the link. So we're here with Robert Barnes. He is our constitutional attorney, and we've been talking about the case around the farmer in Pennsylvania wanting to distribute unpasteurized milk. But I want to move away from that. I got a couple of other things I want to talk about. And I just wanted to get your thoughts sort of globally. One of the things I want to talk about is some of the questionable censorship of a former presidential candidate, some former president, and what you think about the constitutionality of all that. But before I do, I'm just been asking a lot of my guests this same question because I just shake my head every day with a giant thought bubble, giant question mark in the thought bubble over my head. What do you think is happening to us? What has gone on here? How did we get to this place? And what do we need to do to undo it?
I think it's a degree of too much governmental control and institutional control, and too much. I attribute it in part to the professional managerial class, of which, as a lawyer, I'm a part, doctor, you're a part. But too many of our compadres in our professional class think they should really govern the rest of us. They should decide what's best for us, whether it's food, whether it's health, whether it's politics, whether it's speech. Any of it, they're like, well, let us tell you what's good for you, because you don't know what's good for you yourself. We know what's better. And we've tried that, in the professional class of a type governed societies like the Soviet Union didn't turn out so good. We need to trust ordinary people, the entrepreneurial spirit, the nature of free speech, the traditions of the Enlightenment. These are the things that are much more likely to get us to truth and liberty than concentrating power in the hands of bureaucrats, professional managerial class types who have proven incapable of being able to govern the rest of us and make the best decisions for us.
Yeah, I was pointing out the other day that I've fallen into a deep rabbit hole studying the French Revolution, and one of the things that I listened to in a lecture was pointed out that the Jacobins, who were all about, they really sort of invented totalitarianism, but they wanted essentially the monarchical administrative state. They wanted this massive administrative state run by the people, and didn't see any problem with that, while the Girondins wanted something decentralized. And the point being, we are still fighting this conflict that has been tried a million times, this idea that centralization is the answer. Centralization is, I dare say, never the answer. The more, Adam Smith and the invisible hand and those sorts of ideas of decentralization are always the more efficient system, and always get people get humanity to a better place, and people where we all want everybody to go. Why don't we ever learn this lesson?
Exactly. I mean, I think COVID hammered it in our heads in a lot of ways that allowed us to start questioning other things. Why do we have a vaccine system where if I'm a pharmaceutical company, I have all the upside and none of the downside? If I make a dangerous product, well, too bad for you. I don't, with the whole COVID vaccine, when it first came out, I told people, look, I'm not going to trust something with that there's no liability if they lie, if they cheated the system, if they just made a bad product, they're not on the hook. They get lots of money, but they have no risk. And it's like, I just can't trust the system like that. It was the same with the vaccine list that most of us as parents had never second guessed. Now you start to, when it goes from 2 to 4 to 12 to 83 or whatever ridiculous numbers on there now, you start wondering, does my kid need that many? But how can I trust a drug that nobody's liable if they lied to me about it? Nobody's liable if they actually screwed up, if they gave me bad medical advice, if they simply created a product that wasn't safe, if they created that somewhere along the manufacturing process, it got contaminated in some way. How can I trust something like that? And what we learned from COVID is we can't defer and delegate all power to centralized government officials, because they will inescapably, whether unintentionally, as Francis Collins is admitting, or intentionally in some of the more nefarious kind of cases, when you look at the agendas of the Bill Gateses of the world, either way, we can't trust the outcome. The outcome is going to be something that human history over centuries has taught us. Give a lot of power to a small group of people, never turns out well.
What are you referring to, Bill Gates there? I'm not familiar with whatever that reference was.
So, Bill Gates really believes in vaccines. He promotes them heavily and aggressively, sometimes controversially in places like Kenya and India. And for him, he was such a promoter of the vaccine, promoter of a lot of the interventions. He kept saying that China was doing things the right way in response to the lockdowns. Take a look at China's economy and how that's going right now, and everything else. And I think his dream world is a dystopian world. He thinks there's too many people. He wants to reduce the population growth. I don't trust, honestly, anybody who tells me that right out of the gate. But putting that aside, the nature of his belief system and what he thinks is best for us, I don't think is best for us. And the problem is he tends to promote a lot of the WHO. He's the number 2 funder of the World Health Organization behind the U.S. government, because he thinks a small group of people should control things, that's a better world for us ultimately. And I think that's actually what's most threatening to us, is when a small group of people make our decisions for us.
Does he say that out loud? That's sort of, it's such a dumb position. He certainly doesn't strike me as a dumb guy, and he's well read. He looks at history. Does he say that out loud? That the decision making should be Francis Collin. Oops, Francis Collin is a bright guy. He wasn't. Didn't take risk reward into analysis. Disgusting.
Completely. Well, you look behind a lot of the fact-checking organizations that are out there, particularly as to public health matters, they end up being funded heavily by the Gates Foundation. You look at food,
of course.
He's a heavy investor in a lot of these fake foods, these alternative foods that he wants to promote, buying up a lot of farmland, even though he doesn't want to farm. He believes traditional farming is a quote-unquote threat to the environment. And so he's behaving as someone, and he said his model has always been the Rockefellers and the Rockefeller Foundation. And you go back, that goes back to eugenics and a lot of things in the 20s and 30s that the Nazis borrowed from. It's like, that's not a tradition I want to borrow from. I don't think that's what we want to, the path we want to go down. And it just reflects a certain elitism that I think is endemic to a lot of the professional class writ large, that, hey, I got such and such a degree, I should run your life now.
Yeah. Yeah, the elitism. There's a book out, Susan. What is the name of that book? Sitting by your bedside that Tracy gave us. I forget the name of it, but it's making the case that when societies get into trouble, it's when they have ossified elites, ensconced elites, and we certainly have that now. We have these elites that we can't seem to shake off, and no one seems to really appreciate how much that's happening. The elites are the very people those are the ones who are going to tell you how to live your life. And they're the last people on earth I would advise you to listen to.
Exactly. They're the kind of people that will tell you that seeing in church could spread a virus, but going to Walmart never will. Or going to the casino or buying some alcohol. No problem.
Liquor store. Yeah. Liquor store is cool.
Yeah, it was like a woke virus that knew where to go and where not to go. BLM protest, no problem. It magically vanishes. Yeah. You held a picnic. I sued on behalf of someone when they blocked an Easter egg roll at their church in the name of COVID, all outdoors. And I was like, then the same place. It was my hometown, the mayor of the city of Chattanooga. The same place. You could go to the liquor store, though. I was like, okay, hold on a second. How does this make any sense? This is for our health? I don't think so. It's about control. And these people are just control-obsessed people that threaten all of our liberties. Even if they have the best of intentions, they endanger our liberties by the methods they choose to assert power.
You're right. You're reminding me of, Caleb, gosh darn, I was going to ask you to find this, but it may be unfair. It was before the Super Bowl, the operations manager, I think was his title, of the SoFi Center, was telling people, we see you. We've got our eye on you. You get a tub of popcorn and you pull your mask down and leave it down because you've got so much fun. We are watching you. We are out for you. That asshole should lose his job. The fact that guy still has a job is, again, disgusting. These are people that wish you ill. You're outdoors at a football stadium, literally the Super Bowl, and all he cares about is exerting his will upon you. That is not somebody you can trust. Caleb, is that showing up at all, or am I being unfair and asking you to find that?
I'm looking for it.
It's a you.
That quote.
Okay, I'm sorry. I may have. I don't know.
They do like to bury these types of topics too.
Yeah, Corolla and I have pulled it up regularly just to remind everyone what a-holes people were during this thing. That we need to remind ourselves of who these people showed themselves for who they are. And by the way, I would include in that same group the people that accuse people of wanting to kill others for having an opinion about COVID. You're also an asshole, right? If somebody thought, hey man, maybe we ought to reconsider lockdowns. Oh, you need to be crushed because you want to kill somebody. No. We want to consider the best for people because just reviewing the lockdown data per Francis Collins, since we're talking about his commentary, lockdowns. I found a quote from Trump yesterday that came upon my Twitter feed where he was saying, lockdowns are never designed to eliminate COVID. It's just not possible. This is an aerosolized respiratory virus. We're trying to slow it down so we can get to a vaccine, but it will not prevent COVID. Everybody's going to get COVID. He said that right at the initiation of the outbreak. And these people that then flipped and said, oh no, zero COVID, were out of their minds. Were not of their right mind, literally, did not know what they were talking about. And for them to condemn anybody who had other opinions was literally disgusting, false. They should apologize. They should think about their hubris next time. But let's go over to President Trump and talk about his cases and his gag order. What do you think about the lawfare being waged against a former president?
I mean, I think it's frightening because I initially believed that I was like, these are Rubicons. I would talk to people on international news stations and elsewhere, and I was like, I don't think our government will cross those Rubicons. We've never crossed those before. And even though this was coming out of COVID, so I probably should have known better. I was like, they're not going to indict a former president that's the leading opponent of the incumbent administration. We've never done that in American history. They're not going to come up with some crazy legal theory by which contesting an election is now magically and miraculously a racketeering crime. They're not going to say that being the victim of an extortion scheme by someone that you had to pay them off to protect to your wife, that now you're going to be accused of a crime based on technicalities of an accounting interpretation. And yet, and they're definitely not going to say that taking your own documents from the White House is now magically a crime. They're not going to say that. But George Washington took most of his documents home. And yet here we are where he's facing all four. And on top of that, let's bankrupt him because the Attorney General ran on, elect me, I'll help bankrupt Donald Trump. And then does it. Seems like a patent First Amendment violation. And now you have a rogue judge, in this case, sadly, many rogue judges in New York, who are issuing rulings that even people that don't care about Trump at all are like, this is a terrifying ruling for how you do business, for how you operate. This is criminalizing everyday business that takes place in New York and across the country. So it is a scary time to be alive in that sense. All the criticisms of Putin aside, even Putin has never tried to do this kind of thing. This is the extreme nature of it. Any of our critics, other countries, other governments haven't gone weaponized the legal system like this since we had the Soviet-style show trials, which is what this looks like and frequently is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the excesses. What is it? Twice as many professors have lost their jobs in the current sort of, what are we calling this, woke hysteria, as compared to the McCarthy era, where 100 lost their job. Now already 200 have. And did you see an astonishing thing happen yesterday as it pertains to these cases and the lawfare, which was they allowed RFK Jr. on CNN, I think it was yesterday, and he pointed out how the irony or the hypocrisy of the Democrats going after Trump for attempting to undermine democracy when they were actively undermining democracy when it came to his campaign, RFK's campaign. And he even made the case that Trump, too, was being a democratic process being undermined by the way they were behaving. Did you see he went through about 7 different sort of interrogatories, showing where Democrats are specifically undermining democracy, all the while complaining that others are undermining democracy. First of all, did you see that?
Yes, I did. And it was very much confession through projection. A lot of what they accuse Trump of is a list of things they themselves are guilty of. So it fits that narcissistic trait in the same manner. So it's like, they kept saying Trump connected to his family was doing things of questionable nature involving overseas governments. Basically, they described the Biden family. That's what they were describing, it wasn't the Trump family. But we got to protect democracy from democracy. It's very French Revolution-esque. In the name of the people, we have to take all the power away from the people and maybe kill them if they get out of line. Yes. It's that same insanity.
Yeah, that's why I've gone down that rabbit hole. It feels very familiar. The thinking is very familiar. Rousseau was influencing them. His sort of big idea was you had to be intolerant in the name of tolerance. You had to force tolerance. It's just odd. And by the way, any of you out there that are fans of Rousseau, read his confession sometimes. There was never a bigger asshole than Rousseau himself. He dragged along this poor woman who he used essentially as a sexual repository. She had 5 kids. He forced her to leave all of those kids on the doors of orphanages where the survival rate was less than 10%. He's a good guy. This was a good guy. No, he was a horrible human being, and you can read it from the beginning. Even during his childhood, when he was So it's he's a brilliant dude, but his story was long and nefarious. He worked as kind of a servant, and he stole something and then tagged it onto some poor girl there that really needed the job, and allowed her to go to, I think, went to prison because he had stolen something, or he knew where it was, or some nonsense. He just allowed all this crap. Hey, bad guy. But so what is going to happen now? By the way, another thing I'm thinking about the CNN appearance at the end of RFK Jr. going through this whole litany of descriptions of where democracy was being undermined, the CNN host said, "Yeah, but what about Trump?" yeah, but what about? It's like, oh, but still, okay, got it. Yeah, but still. Oh, if you say yeah, but still, then okay, we're good here. So it was a very strange thing. Rather than arguing about whether or not RFK had made a good point, they went just to yeah, but still. It's really, we have to do something. Something has to be done. I don't know what we do, but somehow people have to be held accountable. My son's an attorney, and towards the twilight of COVID, he said, the courts have purpose. We'll work this through in the courts. This is where the courts can be useful. But boy, it's slow, and it's a lot of back and forth. So what do you predict going forward? Do you have any predictions about how this is going to sort out?
I mean, I think ultimately it's going to be up to the Supreme Court to preserve the independence, the integrity of the judicial branch itself, because what's happening is the judicial branch is becoming complicit in election interference and undermining constitutional democracy and depriving people of individual liberty and allowing the legal system to be overtly and openly and partisanly weaponized against a specified individual in ways that all of our laws, going back to the Constitution's prohibition on ex post facto laws and bills of attainder, were all designed to prohibit. The First Amendment says you can't selectively prosecute someone because they're your political opponent. Yet that is happening by their admission in many of these cases. Yeah. Fani Willis is bragging about it, despite all of her unethical and unprofessional behavior that led to that case even being prosecuted. Alvin Bragg has bragged about it. Letitia James has bragged about it. The Biden administration's effectively bragging about it. And I think that all of this is going to put pressure on the Supreme Court. They could step in and stop all of it. They could stop all the censorship with the case pending before them. Now, there, sadly and frighteningly, you had Supreme Court justices saying, well, when it's a pandemic, maybe we need to restrict that First Amendment thing. If you want to restrain the First Amendment, change the Constitution. Don't do it from the bench. But so they have a great opportunity there to put an end to that social media state collusive censorship. They have another opportunity with the immunity cases to put an end to all these cases, to say, look, the president of the United States has immunity unless he's successfully impeached and convicted. We have to have it that way. Otherwise, a president is subject to the extortion of any local politician who has prosecutorial power anywhere in the country. We have a constitutional process to deal with someone who's really a criminal president, and that's the impeachment and conviction process that puts it through the constitutional mechanism. That would negate and lead to the dismissal of all the criminal cases against Trump, because all of them concern acts he took while president. Even if they have some other acts while he wasn't president, the core of the allegations concern acts while he was president. So the Supreme Court could save the appearance of the judiciary and save the judiciary from itself, like the New York and other judges who've gone rogue here, and say, no, you can't indict him. And then at least we wouldn't have that sideshow going through the election where we have constant election interference being done by the judges themselves, trying to prevent Trump from having access to funds, access to being able to campaign, prohibiting his speech by issuing gag orders. These are things that are just never been done in America for a reason. They offend and violate our core constitutional liberties. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the Supreme Court of the United States to preserve and protect that Constitution, or we're all in for an interesting time, shall we say.
Is that case before the Supreme Court now? You mentioned what I used to call Biden, Missouri versus Biden, but what's the other one, the immunity case?
So the presidential immunity case for the D.C. charges is currently before the Supreme Court, but the legal basis for that decision would impact all of the criminal cases against Trump. And so they could, in one clean sweep, like they did with the ballot cases, say, okay, this is getting way out of hand. We're not keeping and excluding people off the ballot who are the leading candidate for president of the United States. Not going to go there on some novel interpretation of the 14th Amendment. They can do the same thing and say, we're going to stop all these criminal charges, stop all the Georgia case, the Florida case, D.C. case, and New York case, because he has immunity for any of the acts you're accusing him of being a crime of. And even though legally it would only impact the D.C. case, by precedent, it would impact all of the cases. And I hope that's what they do. And there's more pressure on them to do it because of how embarrassing these legal proceedings are, with judges saying, I'm going to prohibit you from talking about the fact that I may have a family member who's economically compromised by this very prosecution, and other things like that. Other judges say, I'm going to hold you here and you have to be here for the next 8 weeks and you can't campaign during peak election season. I mean, these are all things that have never happened before for a reason, and it can be up to the Supreme Court to make sure they don't ever happen again for a reason.
When is that decision likely to be handed down? Do we know? The immunity case?
June. By June. All of them they're going to issue by June. There's a chance they go sooner, but most likely June.
And then that includes the Biden versus Missouri, what do they call it now, Mirth versus Biden or something?
Yeah, you see why it would have been good why Justice Alito wanted Robert Kennedy to be allowed to intervene in that case, because there could have been some key arguments made that weren't made at oral argument, because Robert Kennedy was the number one target. I mean, that was the irony of CNN asking him that question. You're asking the guy who the Biden administration, as soon as they got in, said, kick Kennedy off Instagram, get Kennedy off this, get Kennedy off that. I mean, they made him a potential political opponent by trying to censor him everywhere. It wasn't necessarily the smartest political decision ever made, but Biden's never been accused of having too much IQ. So I think that the net effect of it, though, is that all these laws target him, but they impact all of us. So the Bertha, both Biden v. Missouri and Mirtha that have been joined, Mirtha v. Biden being joined, all of it impact all of our freedoms. Are we going to be able to prohibit the state from collusively coordinating with the digital public square from suppressing and censoring our speech? And what else we learned during COVID is we need that dissident speech, because it's what woke a lot of people up to maybe this is going too far, and we definitely need it going forward.
What's your prediction about these two cases?
I'm afraid the Supreme Court's going to split the baby on the social media censorship case. They're going to say, you went too far here, but not too far there. And when they should just stop it altogether, because it's going to open once you put loopholes in there, the government will find those loopholes and use them effectively. And so I think that will be the beginning of the battle for free speech, but it won't be the end of the battle, because the Supreme Court won't go as far as they should go. I think on immunity, they're almost being forced to go as far as they need to go, because otherwise we're going to have embarrassing sideshows. I mean, this is embarrassing for America on the global stage, what we're putting Trump through. I mean, these are bogus cases. It'd be one thing if you had a murder case, a rape case, or something like that. These are made up cases. I mean, so they're on top of political election interference. So I think they almost have to step in and say no more, or that we're all going to be in for a interesting year.
And Robert, I want to wrap up. What's coming down the road for you and Viva?
So we're going to continue to do vivabarneslaw.locals.com is where we do put up all of our stuff, continue to do the Sunday show. The government's obsessed with stopping Amos Miller from now being able to even distribute products outside the state of Pennsylvania, which is supposed to be unconstitutional, interstate commerce clause and all that, supremacy clause, et cetera. But so that case is probably going to keep going through the court system. The government's trying to intervene in the Brooke Jackson case and shut down the biggest allegations of fraud against Pfizer concerning the COVID vaccine. That's going to be litigated too. So the one thing that's definitely the case is there will be no lack of stories to cover for Viva and Barnes for the forthcoming months.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by here. Please say hello to our friend Viva, and we will check you out on X and also over at Locals.
Fantastic. Thanks.
You got it. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it very much. We actually had dinner at our friend Viva's house back. How long ago was that, Susan? Like 3 or 4 months ago. We were down in Florida.
He makes a mean steak.
He does. And they've got some interesting canine family members.
They're all handicapped.
They're very interesting.
Well, no, it's like dragging with, his body.
Caleb, did you ever find that video that I challenged you about? I know I see somebody on the Restream asked for it, and anybody come up with it?
No, I couldn't find it, but in the process of looking for it, I found this lovely old article from 2022 about how Eric Garcetti, LA mayor, says he held his breath when he was doing the maskless photos. And
Yes, God bless you. We should be mocking these people for this insanity. We should be ashamed of ourselves for. I mean, I understand at the beginning there was a lot of confusion, but we should be ashamed of ourselves for caving into these people. That guy harmed the children of the LA area by chanting every night that we had a shelter in place, that you'd kill your family if you go outside.
Barbara Ferrer.
She
dead yet?
Well, look, we just heard from Francis Collins that public health officials are not able to make risk reward decisions, and her stuff lately has just been out of this world wrong. And I remember we had a local show here, and we'd go over regularly this red, yellow, and green set of provisions in order for us to move from red, which we were always in, to green. We essentially had to have 0 COVID cases in 3 months. Think about that. Think about how insane that idea even was. We have hundreds of COVID cases still every day, so we would not have been out of COVID if she had her way. It's just so. The fact that we allowed these people to do this.
She was mentally ill.
It should give us such pause. We should be thinking about how do we, A, make sure this doesn't happen again, and B, be sure that individuals, these people work for us. It's the government of the people. They work for us. They don't tell, the microphone keeps moving. They don't tell you how to live your life. I'm not saying it should be a free-for-all, and there are limits of freedom. I understand that. But for them to be in your life and safety Uber Alice and telling you what to eat, this is way, way, way out of line. Keep it all local. Your physician, your kids' teachers, your community members, right, in your neighborhood. That's where sphere of influence should be. Not somebody from on high telling you how to live. It is just so wrong with a capital W, and it's actually disgusting that we've been through all this. And now they're starting to show the reality of how wrong they were. Some of the more courageous ones, like Francis Collins, God bless him, is stepping up and telling the truth, and we should be learning from that. So here we go. I'm going to be away tomorrow, but Kelly Victory, a new TWC chief board member, is going to sit in for me, and she'll be here with Ed Dowd, which was always interesting.
You have a question on Rumble.
Okay. He's got a lot of interesting new data on cancer and cancers. And what do you got there, Susan?
Rumble was handing out some dollar bills today for you.
Oh, good. Let's get the questions.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you still defend Fauci? How do you defend his 2008 study that concluded majority of 1918 deaths were from bacterial lung infections, not flu? But he never mentioned that in 2020.
Right. So Dr. Fauci's behavior during COVID was mind-boggling to me, as were that of many. I think Dr. Birx was still your bigger problem because she was, as you heard from Francis Collins, they weren't thinking about anything. And yet from what those guys did there in Washington, she went out and evangelized to the rest of the country, not religiously. She evangelized about the topic of lockdown. And she was the contagion of how lockdowns moved from DC and New York to North Dakota, places which didn't have COVID. It's just ridiculous. So I blame her more than Fauci. Fauci, when I look back now on some of the recommendations that he gave us back during the AIDS epidemic, I have concerns about. He was using fear then. He was somebody I looked forward to for guidance and inspiration. And I was there when the AZT boxes were open, and I was so appreciative of that because I could tell these young men now, not that they were just going to die in 6 months, but that maybe this would do something. Not a great medicine, we knew it, but maybe it would push their life expectancy down 9 months. And during that 9-month interval, maybe we come up with more antivirals, which is exactly what happened. So I was there, I lived it. Some of what he advocated, again, was using fear, which I did. I used fear. Remember that? If you have sex with somebody, you're having sex with everybody they ever had sex with. That was fear. That was how we used fear. It's too much. And in COVID, that same playbook was disastrous and damaging. So that's where I will leave that. And I beyond that, I can't defend much of what he did, and unable to answer Rand Paul's question why it's the virus is somehow not okay go on the beach or paddleboard or go to a skate park, but you can go to a political demonstration. Can't go to a church political demonstration. That was insanity. You should have been fired immediately, and we didn't do any of that. So bureaucrats, elites are ensconced, and we learned that that's a problem now. Any other questions there, Susan?
Fleet Lord Avatar just gave you $20.
Oh,
This is
my.
a good one. Someone get that lawyer into AG office or SCOTUS during next Trump administration. He looks to be from the people for the people.
There you go.
Yeah, everybody likes him.
Watch his he and Viva's podcast and stream, whatnot.
But there were other ones, but I can't find them.
Okay. Well, I
Oh,
apologize.
that's Fleet.
Put him on the
Yeah.
screen.
I apologize. I didn't see them.
A couple people
Yeah,
said
I saw
that.
some of them go up on the screen there. Most of them were just sort of statements, right? Rather
Yeah,
than
and thanks
questions.
for
Yeah,
the,
some of
you
them,
know,
and,
thanks
the
for the
ones doing
love.
Rumble Rants. Thank you. Thanks for helping feed my babies.
Yes. Yes, it helps. It helps us all.
Every penny helps.
And so let's put the schedule up again. As I said, it's Ed Dowd and Kelly Victory in here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then Vivek
Dangerous
Ramas- I think
duo
Vivek
tomorrow.
Ramaswamy is my next guest when I come back. Yep, that's on April 9th. Ivor Cummings with Kelly because I'm gone again. I've got this next 2 weeks are kind of crazy. Jack Prasalvic and April 15th. Matthias Desmet, Salty Cracker. It's all coming, and then more. Our wonderful producer Emily Barsh is on the loose, so you can look forward to many, many, many great guests. If you have suggestions, contact drdrew.com. Attention, Susan.
Head
She
on
looks
over
through
to
those.
drdrew.com/sponsors to get all the links and the discounts on our great ads and sponsors.
Yes, we're very fortunate to be able to stand by. Look, I mean, those are
Keep Caleb's babies fed.
for sure. And, in terms of my daily practices, that's a lot of them are right there in those sponsors.
And we appreciate that you guys put up with our commercials. We really do.
Yes, we do. But the fact that you're not all on True Niagen troubles me. Whenever somebody thinks I don't look old, I always assume it's that True Niagen. That NAD metabolism is very important. You should be attending to it.
Well, that's also the ad at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah.
So we have to maybe put it at the end of the show when we have 2,000 people watching. So.
All right. So we appreciate you being here. I've got to hit the road. I'm going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina tomorrow. So that should be
Woohoo.
interesting. Yeah, woohoo. And then where are we next week? Is it New Orleans?
New
next
Orleans.
Week? We're in New Orleans
We're doing
next week.
Southern travel.
We are up and back quite a bit. So we will see you. I'll see you. Is that April 9th with Vivek? That's where I'm here. Yes, that's on next Tuesday.
No, Tuesday.
Yeah. All right.
Monday
that
you
should
have
be
a
very,
shoot
very
too.
interesting. We'll see you then.
Ta-ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. The parallel economy has empowered us to care for our health, well-being, as well as longevity. Likewise, for us pet parents who now have a place to go when it comes to keeping the family dogs, cats, even horses in the best shape possible. As a dog dad, I'm thrilled to be working with Pet Club 24/7, a company founded by two guys who lost dogs to serious conditions, including cancer. Pet Club 24/7 has an incredible array of products, including a line of supplements for humans, such as the Inforce Plus Corolius Versicolor and Inforce Corolius Versicolor with reishi. My friend and colleague, Christina Ferrari, a cancer survivor herself, swears by it.
When I was diagnosed, the doctor in the emergency room told me, you have 2 years to live.
Oh, boy.
Along with the stem cell, I took these. I have been in remission for 8 years now.
For dogs, Mush Puppy treats are a fan favorite. Rex, oh boy. Oh, he came right. Oh, there he is. They are also made with the Coriolis versicolor mushroom, which supports their immune system according to hundreds of clinical studies. Here's Kristen Ludlow, National Vice President.
That strain does matter. We do have the most potent strain, and we also extract it in a proprietary way. And that's why we've been having such wonderful experiences with these products.
Mush Puppies are made here in the U.S. There are no fillers. It's non-addicting. Your dog can't accidentally overdose. Go to drdrew.com/petclub247 for a discount off the list price. That is drdrew.com, PETCLUB 247, Pet Club 247.